All right. Thanks for being here. Mike Messier, it's been a while since we talked. Appreciate you calling in because I had some questions about scripts and wanted to get your view on them. But as you are an artist, writer, filmmaker, you seem to be the one to ask.
I'm happy to
So,
be here, Ross. Yeah, thanks for having me today, Ross. And good to talk to you again.
yeah. And I know we got your film festival coming up too. So maybe we can talk about that a little as well.
Yeah, that would be the All Comedy Short Film Festival is the first one on the docket, and then there'll be two more this year. So happy to discuss those as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been following you on Instagram, so I get the information there. That's good.
Yeah, I was preemptively kicked off of Facebook, so now if people want to follow me on social media, it's one Mike Messier on Instagram, one Mike Messier on X, one Mike Messier YouTube channel. No more Facebook.
Huh. Well, the end of an era, I guess.
I actually feel a lot less clouded. I think of all the social media, at least for me, Facebook was the one that I engaged a lot of useless arguments with. So now I'm out of there.
Okay. Yeah, I got out of Facebook a couple years ago, and then I think all the social media stuff I have now is the website related things, and then even LinkedIn. Like I linked out maybe 5 or 6 years ago. So
Yeah.
it's good. All right. So scripts. I remember at the last film festival I went to, we talked a little bit about proof of concepts and where do those fit in to your time of writing a script? When do you start thinking about doing a proof of concept, and why would you?
A proof of concept, usually I would throw the word video at the end of that. Proof of concept video is basically a way to promote your finished screenplay, promote a, say, if you want to pitch a TV series or if you want to pitch a feature film, it's great to have a great script. That's essential. And then on top of that, here's the cruel irony of the screenwriting world or even the TV series writing world. Everybody wants a great script. Everybody says there's no great scripts out there. There actually are. The reality is nobody wants to sit down and read a great script. So when I say nobody, that's not, people's uncle or their dad or their friend or their sister. That's people who have the power to greenlight your project, to invest in it. These folks that are it's really hard to get people to sit down and read a script, and probably because there's an abundance of not so great scripts out there. So it's just a difficult business. So one way to kind of promote yourself, whether it's me, you, or anybody listening to this, is to make a proof of concept video. With AI, with things like Canva, it's never been easier to make a fairly decent proof of concept video. You don't have to spend a lot of money to make a proof of concept video. The one you're probably thinking of, Ross, or two that I've made recently. During the pandemic, I made Seduction of Distance, which basically I enlisted myself to act in a 5 minute monologue, which was derived from A Distance from Avalon, which was my first novel. You've read that one. You gave some really good feedback on it. And basically, I memorized a monologue. I had a friend of mine, Kim Kaling, over Zoom. I basically brought her in to be my acting coach for something that I wrote. And because I needed help memorizing the lines, as an actor, that's my biggest weak point is just memorizing lines. So Kim helped me do that. And then one day in the summer of 2021, that's how, time flies, I found myself in Mount Dora, Florida. And a gentleman suggested I check out Lake Dora, Florida. And I got there and I was just kind of captivated by the scene. And I knew that this was, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I said to myself, I think at magic hour, which is basically dawn, it's going to look really cool on this lake. And I'm pretty much memorized this monologue. Let me work on it for a few hours. And I think I can film this myself with my phone. And basically, I did the monologue probably 80 or 90 times. And just was directing myself as an actor and filming it. And eventually captured this monologue with a lot of energy, pretty low production values, but good enough for a 5 minute short. And that was the first, proof of concept video. Now, the acting in that has been pretty well received. I mean, this was material that I'm passionate about because I wrote this material and I'm acting in it and I'm filming it. So if there's one word that pops, it's like, okay, this guy really believes in these things that he's saying as the character. So that piece has won a few acting awards and like awards for like cell phone movies. You know what I mean? Like there's actually film festivals that will give awards to a movie made by a phone or a monologue or a one actor movie. So that type of thing. Now, a couple of years later, Ross, I said, I'd like to do that again, and I would like to up the production values. So I enlisted my friend Tim Labonte. We've worked together for a long time, and basically, I went on backstage, which is an actor, Actors Access. I put a casting call out for an actress. I used a monologue also from A Distance from Avalon. This was from the female character of Heartbreak, and basically about 140 women sent in their information to audition for the piece. Of those 140, I sent 100 an invitation to send in an audition reel, and of those 100 that got invited to audition, 40 sent back an audition, and of the 40, there was two that were really close. Like one of these two could definitely do it, and I went with the younger actress, and she was actually pretty much an unknown, Jessica Corredero, and she's in Tampa, Florida. And the actress that she kind of beat out was kind of a C-list celebrity, So the point is, I got Jessica involved. We did a couple of Zoom rehearsals. She had actually worked with an acting coach, and when we finally filmed, we filmed in my buddy Tim. His parents have a condo in Vero Beach, Florida. We used a green screen, and we filmed her with the green screen. And then it was pretty easy to film her doing the monologue, and we shot from different angles and so forth. And in the production, what we did is we took still photography that I got for free off of the Unsplash website, which is like a website where photographers actually donate their photography for people as self promotion. And we use the photography in the background, and like we have like a tiger, and it's like a lion in the background. It's like a photograph of a lion, and my editor Tim was able to like animate the lion. So like the lion kind of comes to life, and then we put in a roar of the lion. And there was several, in this 5-minute short, which is called Many Keys, the Heartbreak Monologue. It played at the Austin Revolution Film Festival recently. It's won also several awards as a short 5-minute proof of concept video. The basic idea with this 5-minute proof of concept video, if people like it, the idea is, well, this is what we did with basically maybe $2,000 of a budget coming out of my pocket. Imagine what we could do with the real budget and with real sets and so forth. And that's to promote A Distance from Avalon. So that's kind of a long-winded answer. I don't know if I missed anything, any nuances you want more information on.
No, that's good. It's like a storyboard, except a little more interactive in the sense that you don't have to really do anything except keep your eyes open and listen. So you don't have to flip through anything. You don't have to imagine any movement. You get to see it and then kind of immerse yourself in the project a little to be able to say, okay, it's got promise to it.
Exactly. Yeah, it's basically you push a button. It's on YouTube now. It's on Vimeo. It's easy enough to find. Many Keys, the Heartbreak Monologue. It's 5 minutes. So basically, it's a proof of concept video, and there's many ways. And when you say a storyboard, it's basically a video. You push play and you watch it like any other short film or YouTube video. I think the production qualities are pretty high. I think people who watch it are pretty impressed, and it's unique, and that kind of identifies the story of the bigger story, a Distance from Avalon. So there you go. And I think you asked the question, why? Like that was part of your question. Like I said, it's basically to promote something. And here's another thing: as just a creator, it's increasingly it's very frustrating when you have big ideas for a big movie. You have a screenplay you've worked on, and you can't afford basically to make the production you'd like to make out of your own pocket. Well, one thing that kind of gives you a sense of satisfaction as an artist is, I can't afford to make this 90-minute movie, but I can't afford to make this 5-minute proof of concept video. So it's kind of like keeping yourself engaged with your own work. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to give myself an appetizer. If I can't have the Martin Scorsese budget right now, or the name your famous director budget. If I can't do that, I can at least assemble something that shows people I can actually make movies. And if I was so fortunate to meet a great financier who put some more money into this thing, I could really do something awesome.
Yeah, it's good. There is a little something to keeping yourself going too, from just reading the script and then taking it to the next level. And also, you probably learn some things too about the camera work, the angles. If you haven't done that stuff already, then it's not hurting to do a proof of concept because you're learning how to show what you see in your mind to somebody else.
Probably the biggest success that I can think of off the top of my head, Ross, with proof of concept videos. Did you see the movie with Miles Teller, uh, Whiplash, about the drumming student, the drummer, and the over the top angry, the actor J.K. Schellinger, I think is, I always get his name wrong, but um,
Yeah, I've seen part of it. I haven't seen the whole thing, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. All right. So Whiplash. Whiplash. Yes, I've seen some
yeah,
of it, but not all of it.
it's a great movie, and basically it's Miles Teller and the gentleman Schillinger from the show Oz, great actor. And basically, I think he won Best Supporting Actor for this. And but Whiplash made I believe, a 20-minute short film in order to promote a proof of concept video short film that was 20 minutes. I believe Miles is in it. Um, Actually, Miles is not in it. The guy that plays the music instructor is in it, and that led that film to get funding to make a feature. So it is possible for proof of concept videos to work. Like anything else, it's a numbers game, but it can happen.
Nice, nice. When you're writing a script, how do you approach the writing of it? Like, where do you start?
There's different ways. I mean, I a lot of times, Ross, I'm just kind of off the cuff. Like I'll just start, you know, fade in colon, uh, and just start writing. There are methods, and I brought some books to share. There are definitely, this one's my favorite screenwriting book. It's called Screenplay: Writing the Picture by Rusin and Downs. Uh, this book I discovered because it was being used as the textbook at the Center for Digital Imaging Arts in Waltham, Massachusetts. And I happened to be at that campus, and I went into the bookstore and I said, "Do you have any suggestions for a really good screenwriting book?" And the person working that day suggested this book. I picked it up, and I would say if anyone's thinking of starting to write screenplays, this is the one that I would recommend to begin with, because it's kind of a nuts and bolts and creative lesson type of book. It covers both aspects of it, as far as formatting and as far as creativity. A lot of people follow outlines. I would say probably the most efficient outline is in Save the Cat by Blake Snyder. That's a classic screenwriting book. I think it came out in the late 90s. And unfortunately, the author, Blake Snyder, passed away about 10 years ago. But he was a guy that wrote this book because Blake was listening. He would actually, in the audio cassette days, Blake would take a VCR, play the big box office hits like movies like Steel Magnolias or Sleeping with the Enemy, and he would convert VHS tapes onto audio cassette. And then he would listen in his car as he was driving around Los Angeles trying to get a deal as a screenwriter. And he started seeing these patterns in these movies just based on the dialogue, because he was listening to audio cassettes of movies as he's driving around LA in all the traffic. And basically, Blake started seeing these bullet points, like, the catalyst would come at page 12, and then the all is lost moment would come around the 60th minute of these movies. And he started seeing these patterns. And then he wrote a book called Save the Cat, which explored the patterns of these great box office hits. And Blake, by his own admission, is not trying to make a blueprint for every single movie. He specifically says, if you're trying to make something like, Pulp Fiction or something more art house, this is probably not the book that's going to help you. But if you're trying to make a mainstream movie, like say a Titanic or something like that, that his advice is very helpful. So, I mean, if I had to put somebody's book over, I would say Blake Snyder Saved the Cat, as far as screenwriting, because I think it's on page 71, he has an outline. He calls it the Blake Snyder beat sheet. And it's actually very helpful if people are looking for a way to do an outline. And I've used that. I wrote a script called Bad Girls with Good Tattoos. And I wrote that script when I was reading Blake's book. And I basically followed the bullet points, and it does work. You don't have to do that, but that's one way of doing that.
Yeah, I'm working on a TV, like a 30-minute show script now with another guy. And first you have the collaborative writing, which I've written some novels with other people before, and the script writing seems different to me, or maybe it's just different personalities, that he's very much into the format. Like, it's got to have this structure, it's got to do this, it's got to do that. And I'm okay with that, but I do have the the more Bruce Lee approach to it, which is form is meant to be forgotten. But I guess you have to know the form to be able to forget it. And I think it just comes in with storytelling. If you can tell a story to somebody in regular life, like you go to the grocery store and you get something and you can tell that story, then you followed the 3-act structure. Probably, like, you could put it into it enough to where you could go, oh yeah, I followed that. So I think it's a chicken or the egg thing. Obviously, I think the egg comes before the chicken because, well, we can talk about that some other time. So the form I'm not so worried about as long as it makes sense. And I had a creative writing teacher one time that said, the overwhelming always is, does it make sense? When you're talking about punctuation, what it looks like, any of that stuff, can somebody understand what you're saying? So I see the point and the guidelines of the 3-act structure, and I think it falls into it anyway. Like, you can make an argument for anything.
Sure.
I think that falls into the 3-act structure, but yeah, it's good to keep in mind. I've read a book on script writing from Sid Field,
Yeah,
which it's been updated, but it still seems antiquated in parts because oh yeah, there it is.
that's
Because
one
he's
of them.
talking about different, like, it seems like it's in the 70s or maybe even before, a person with experience of before that, because you're like, I'm not sure if that's really the case anymore of how that works in the industry. Also, although I've never been in the industry, so I like it, and I think that it has a lot of examples on how you format a script. And I've looked at the script writing software and I started using some of that, but then I realized I need to know what the format is to use a script writing software, because I don't know when I need to do a cut to, a fade in, a stage direction. I, I don't know any of that stuff. So I need to learn that language before I can format it on the page. So I just am writing it in Word and formatting it. Probably, I think it's to an industry standard, but then there's things like, if you have what a character is doing, do you put that in parentheses and left justify it, or do you put that in under what they're saying in parentheses? So I'm just trying to find a way that reads easy enough and looks okay on the page to where you'd go, this is, somebody put some thought into this, and there is a standard to it, but it may not be that industry standard that would fit into a script writing software.
I
How do
would
you
probably.
format yours?
I mean, I use Final Draft, and Final Draft is basically what that's about as high as it gets. And it's, I mean, people might argue the price. It's about $200 or less if you have a student ID or if you have a teacher ID, and sometimes they have sales. And I think Final Draft is the way to go. I had a friend who's since passed on. My buddy Joe Carriari was not a screenwriter, but he was a musician. And I was telling Joe, I said, Joe, sometimes it's frustrating for me because I'm trying to explain to people that if they really want to write a screenplay, they've got to use Final Draft, and they don't want to pay the money to use it. And then it makes it really hard to kind of work with folks that aren't using it. And Joe made the comparison to, for musicians out there, to something I think it was called Pro Tools, which is basically like a music editing producing software. And it's basically, if it was Pro Tools or whatever the music program was, if people are trying to record music with anything but that specific program, they're really doing themselves a disservice. And they're also doing people that are trying to work with them a disservice, because it's like, for whatever reason, this program has become the industry standard. And if you really want to just make things smooth for yourself in working with other people, this is the program to get. And so whether it's music or whether it's screenwriting, I mean, I suppose in the Major League Baseball, there's an accepted, uniform bat, or, you know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? So if people try to break that, and I've really gone into deep arguments with people that don't want to pay the $150 or $200 for Final Draft, and I'm not getting a commission from Final Draft. I'm just trying to save people the aggravation. I would just say get Final Draft and make your life a lot easier, because it's pretty intuitive. What I think you're doing, Ross, is you're messing around a lot with margins and tabs, and you're probably putting a lot of energy into giving yourself a headache with the margins of your Word document, when if you had Final Draft, that would all be done for you. And then, like I'm not even plugging my own book, because I have a book on Amazon about, creativity and stuff. But I mean, this book, you're a pretty smart guy. So between this book and just paying the $200 for the program, you could probably get it down in a month, if not less. I actually took a screenwriting course after I graduated college. I took a summer course at the University of Rhode Island, just to do it, and I basically spent 3 or 4 months or whatever it was learning screenwriting from a teacher that was pretty good, and that helped a lot. So I mean, I think if you're putting a lot of time into the formatting, you're kind of killing time and killing energy from your creative side.
It makes sense. And yeah, it makes sense. I don't spend a lot of time with the formatting just because I know how Word works, but I did see it as you're learning the language of script writing, and then you're learning the language of whatever program you're using. And I didn't start with Final Draft. I tried 3 or 4 other ones, and I just need to stick with it, I guess, to get to the ease of that. But I feel like I've gotten better over a couple weeks of thinking about the script, writing it, and putting it into a format where maybe a script writing software would be easier now, because I know I know what I want to do, and then I just have to figure out how to do it on that software.
In my opinion, and I mean, the first time I used Final Draft was back in Final Draft 1. A friend of mine, I had written a stage play, right? I had written a stage play called Victorious. It was actually on stage. I was very pleased with myself. And then I wanted to convert that stage play script into a film script. And I was basically doing Microsoft Word, and just making my own format. And it was kind of a jumbled mess. And a friend of mine, a guy named Chris Miller, he was, one of these early computer bootleggers where anything you wanted, he could bootleg and give you a free copy, right? So he gave me a free disc of Final Draft, a bootleg version. And he said, Mike, this is a program to help you with writing screenplays. And I had never heard of it before. And I put it in the old disc, the compact disc or CD-ROM, whatever it was. And it was like, wow, this is really a godsend, because this is helping me. And I basically rewrote that entire script into Final Draft. I mean, we don't have to talk about Final Draft all day. I'll just say that to me, it's like, if you have the program, if you're using the correct program, which is built for what you're trying to do or what you are doing, which is write a screenplay, you're learning on the job. You know what I mean? So it's the Final Draft program is not going to judge you because you're not doing it right. It's going to help you to do it right. So that's just my take on it. And I hate to see people waste time, because screenwriting takes so much time in the first place, that messing around with a tab margin or an enter button, it's just not a good use of time for people, in my opinion.
Okay. I'll give it a try again. How much thinking and visualizing do you do about music and shots when you're writing a script?
I would
How
say
much do
for
you plan on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, another brutal lesson you learn along the way. Let's start with music. As a screenwriter, I've done that. I've done that where I've written in, like, my Wrestling with Sanity script. I had the song "Owner of a Lonely Heart" by Yes. Like there's a scene in my screenplay where the character is in the psychiatric hospital and he's in the TV room of the psych hospital. He looks up and the music video "Owner of a Lonely Heart" by Yes comes on the screen and the vulture flies. And to me, this makes a lot of sense. And if I was, once again, Martin Scorsese or name your famous director with an unlimited budget, I would certainly get that type of thing. As an unknown screenwriter, like I would say that I am, if I'm going to put all these music cues into it and not have the money to get those copyright clearances from our friends at Aspica or whatever it is, you're once again doing yourself a disservice, because you're kind of writing a script that you cannot make. And I've made that mistake many times where I've said, like, I would love to have the song, what's the song, War Machine by ACDC. I wrote that into one of my scripts, God Is My Best Friend, which is a comedy. So what I did, once I learned that you're kind of setting yourself up if you say, "Owner of a Lonely Heart" plays in the background. Here's a trick that I learned along the way. You can do something like this. A 1980s pop hit such as "Owner of a Lonely Heart" by Yes plays in the background, or a hard hitting heavy metal song in the vein of War Machine by ACDC, or similar to Hell's Bells. So basically, you're kind of covering your bases. You're giving the reader, who hopefully is a person with money to finance this film or a screenplay contest or whatever, but you're giving them an indication that you would like your ACDC song or your Sheryl Crow song or your Lady Gaga song. You're giving them that indication, but also you're conceding this may not happen. Like if I say "such as Lady Gaga," we know that we probably can't afford Lady Gaga's music, but we have this other pop singer from Jacksonville or from Tampa who sounds sort of like Lady Gaga, and we can kind of get her music in for the cheap. So my point is, that's what I've done. Whether or not that's the way to do it, I don't know, but I've done that. I'll just use the friendly little words "such as" or "similar to," in the vein of, and that's how I feel like I'm covering the bases, that the reader knows I have aspirations for this awesome music, but at the same time, they know I'm realistic enough to realize we probably can't afford it.
Yeah, I just do the track something like, and then I put the title and who it's by, or if it's a song that a lot of people do, then I'll just say the name of the song and not have a person by it. For me, music helps me when I'm writing because I play it when I'm writing that scene. So I'm thinking about it. It's back there in the mind grapes, as Tracy Morgan would say, just cogitating itself. And then it gives me the tone of the scene to me. To somebody else, it'll be different. And if you change the song, it's going to be different. And to somebody else, of course, it'll be different. But yeah, I like the music part, and I like putting together a little unofficial soundtrack of the thing. And then if somebody reads it, they can listen to that song if they want to or not, and just keep going on. Nevertheless, keep going. But yeah, I understand that you can't get rights to all the songs you'd like to get rights to.
Here's a thing that might be a dividing line in our conversation here, because I think that, and I'm not coming from a highfalutin place. I mean, trust me, my level of success is nowhere near where I would like it to be in all of this stuff. So I say this with just my experiences and my opinions, and people can take it or leave it. But I feel like there's also a divide between writing screenplays that in our mind would be a great script and would be, the Citizen Kane of 2025. And in that case, write all the, write all the movie songs that you want, like reference all the songs you want, say that you want Audrey Plaza in the movies, do whatever you want. If you're writing for your friends or for your relatives, or if you're in a writing group, or if you're writing for pleasure and enjoyment, then do whatever you want. But if you're actually sending this script to producers and financiers and stuff like that, and you want them to seriously take your script as something they might actually put money into and produce, then it's more appropriate to play by the rules that are established, for better or for worse. And I mean, one of the best scripts I ever read was from a friend of mine named Rachel. She wrote this script that was like her personal passion project, and she made references to Motown music and to Drake and to all these like musicians. And she even wrote, because this was for a screenwriting group that we had, she wrote, if you can play the song, if you're not familiar with these songs, please listen to them as you're reading the screenplay. And I said, well, this is pretty ambitious, and this is asking a lot of people for a unpaid writing group. But I did it. I sat there and I listened to all the Drake songs and all the Motown songs and all the songs, some I knew and most I didn't. And I said, wow, that was like a fun experience, because like listening to your musical suggestions and reading your screenplay, I did get a nice image. But here's the thing. She was a very good friend of mine. I had the time to do it. If I had been a feature film producer in Hollywood or New York City, I wouldn't have taken the time to do that for an unknown screenwriter. So, like I said, there's a divide between what you can, quote, get away with, quote, with your friends and your own little community, and what the people with money are going to tolerate, or what they're going to do for you. And if you're, if you're Francis Ford Coppola's daughter, you'll probably get the 3 hours from somebody in Los Angeles. But if you're Mike or Ross from Jacksonville, you probably won't.
What do you think that those people are looking for when they look at a script? What's the first thing where they go, okay, I'll keep reading. I'll keep reading. I'll keep reading. How do you keep them going?
Well, they're probably looking for something beyond even the page, which is probably an attachment. Like if you happen to somehow have an actor of note attached or interested, they probably want something before they even read the script. If there's some type of gimmick, a lead actor or somebody else has put money into it. And these are not fun answers that I'm giving. You know what I mean? These are brutal answers, but I think that's probably true. As far as what what all these, and I've read so many screenwriting books, and man, and what they all typically say is like, you've got to hook them quick. Like it used to be like the first 10 or 12 pages had to be really good. Now it's like the first 2 pages. If they get to page 3 and they're not emotionally invested in this thing, or at least intrigued, they're out. And the other thing we have to realize is that a lot of times, if you even get the opportunity to send your screenplay to somebody, they're most likely going to have a reader. And the reader is most likely an intern, someone who's in their 20s. Their tastes, what intrigues a person in their 20s is probably a lot different than the writer, and also a lot different from the executive. So once again, these are just frustrations and roadblocks and so forth. I mean, I can tell you, Ross, of the success that I've had with screenwriting as far as a movie that I've written actually being made, I guess I'd give 2 examples. One is a script that I wrote, basically knowing I'd have a $10,000 or so budget out of my own pocket, because I got hit by a drunk driver. And I started to write a movie that I could make on a very limited budget, basically projecting how much money I'd get from this car settlement. And that movie, I wrote it in about a week, the first draft, with the idea of 4 actors, because I was so frustrated with other screenplays I was writing, such as Wrestling with Sanity and Kristen the Coffee Girl, that I was writing scripts that I couldn't afford to make on my own, and hoping that somehow, being in obscure Rhode Island, I would somehow make a movie with people just who didn't know what they were doing, quite frankly, and neither did I. So when I finally just said, you know what, I'm going to have about a $10,000 budget to make a movie, let me write something that I can film for $10,000, which is still a pretty big challenge, but I did it. And a year and a half later, Blood Sugar Sid Ace, we were making and editing that movie, which is now available on YouTube and Vimeo and so forth. And is that movie a big box office hit or even a big independent film hit? No, but it's a movie that I'm proud of. It's a movie that I feel good about. And the movie that you can watch now is better than how I imagined it. You know what I mean? Because once again, my buddy Tim Labonte did a great job with the editing, and the actors brought it. And I'd like to think we had a good time making it. Maybe the actors would disagree, but I mean, that's how I made one movie that actually got to a feature. You know, as far as short films, I've done a ton of short films. You know, if you want to talk about a success that I've had, as far as a bigger release, The Manor, which is a horror film, these two guys in Rhode Island, Matt and Glenn were their names. They called themselves Two Cousin Productions. They had written a rough draft. A friend of mine, Tommy DiNucci, basically enlisted me. He was the middleman who put me together with these two guys, and I was brought on as the lead screenwriter. These two guys had never written a feature film script before. They had like a 33-page first draft. It was overstuffed with horror movie stuff. Like there was gnomes and there was a ghost, or, you know, all types of stuff was in this horror script. And I was brought in to basically lead a rewrite. You know what I mean? In other words, I was brought in as the fixer, like the guy that's going to take this collaboration of ideas and make it sustainable for an actual 90-minute script, which I think I did a pretty good job on. And then, believe it or not, somehow, mostly through the determination of these two cousins, Glenn and Matt, they did a fundraiser with a group called Funny for Funds, which was like a stand-up comedy group that would do charity work for raising money. And these two guys actually got their movie produced. In my deal, I put a thing in there that I had to have a role. If the movie actually got made, I'd have a role. So I ended up playing Oli Baton, and I had the singer of Godsmack, Sully Erna, played my brother, and we had the WWF former champion Kevin Nash was in the movie, and so I had a scene with him. The lead actress Christina Robinson was on the show Dexter for a couple of seasons, so we had a pretty good cast in this movie. The movie got made, and eventually Lionsgate distributed it. So, how did I get my name as the lead writer on a movie that Lionsgate distributed? Basically because I was friends with people that were more successful than I was. And I had done a lot of things for these guys as friends in the film world, outside the film world. I had helped them with their projects. I had, you know, written several treatments for free and so on and so forth. So it wasn't just that they liked me because I was a nice guy. It's because I was actually contributing to projects that got made or didn't get made along the way. And eventually we had this horror film, The Manor, that once again, people can see it. It's out there in, you know, streaming platforms of various types.
Nice. How do you, when you're writing your script, how do you format or write for space to reflect time in a scene that is like I'm doing an abduction scene right now, and it's 5 pages now, but I'm not sure it's 5 minutes if you go with a page a minute thing. I think it could be more or less depending on how it's shot. So that's the other part of the question. But when you're writing it, how do you space it out for time or condense it if you want something that's longer to be a shorter time?
I think I get what you're saying. I mean, Ross, you mentioned the minute a page thing. That's kind of a basic guideline that actually turns out to be more or less accurate. Where if you have a 90-page script, it typically turns out to be around 90 minutes. I think one thing, Ross, is that as long as a movie is not, I mean, yes, there's movies like The Brutalist that's 3 hours and 45 minutes long. That's the exception to the rule. The for a feature, you probably want to shoot around 90 to 110 pages. People are kind of forgiving. Like there's not a thing where, oh, you have an 89-page script, no one's going to read it, or you have a 102-page script instead of 101. I mean, but if you're talking about, I mean, I've done little tricks, man. Like I've entered, you know, a 10-page screenwriting contest or whatever. And if my script is 12 pages, I can look at it and I can condense the action lines to make the script a little tighter. I typically like to have a lot of white space on my pages so that it's easier on the eye. But if you're really concerned about and I'm not sure if I'm truly answering your question as far, is that what you're getting at, like the length, or what do you mean exactly?
It's formatting it, the space to reflect the time, like to get it as accurate as possible. Like I could write a half a page and it would be a 5-minute shot. How do you stretch that out to be able to show this is going to take 5 minutes? Do you try to stretch it across 5 pages? Do you
No,
make a note that says this is 5 minutes, or do you just leave it up to the director and their vision?
I would probably, I think the last part of your answer is probably the best. Leave it up to the director and their vision. But I would just put words in there like moments pass before Eddie realizes the cigarette in his fingertips are burning his hand. You know what I mean? Or I just put, Debbie says, I love you. And Charles thinks about it for what seems like an eternity before responding, but I hate you, Debbie. I love your sister. Whatever it is, I would just kind of put some verbiage into your not your dialogue, but your action lines. You know what I mean? And I think what kind of concerned me earlier when you were talking about the WordPress or the Microsoft Word version of what you're doing with your writing, um, action lines such as Eddie kicks the football, that should be on an action line for the most part, not in parentheses. You know what I mean? So if you were going to say Eddie as the character name, you could put parentheses deliberately, parentheses, screams, look out for the football or something like that. I guess there's just a difference when you're doing stuff on Final Draft. It kind of cleans up some of this stuff for you and you'll kind of intuitively get it. But I don't know if that answer helps.
Yeah, I think the word I got on parentheses was it's for actor, like how they say something. And then your action line is left justified for it. Maybe you capitalize something if you go into those rules of all caps for certain things, like a prop or introduction of a character name, all those, that list of things for all caps. But I, when I look at scripts, because one of the ways I was thinking about how am I going to format it and what do I want it to look like, when I look at a Seinfeld script, that looks a lot more like a play to me than a movie script. Like there's not it's stripped down version of it, and that's one of the things I like about script writing versus novel writing is you don't have 3 pages describing a room or setting up a scene. It's just the 3 words, exterior night grocery store or exterior grocery store night. And then you go on with maybe a 1 or 2 line explanation about what's happening, maybe. And then you go into the dialogue. Like it seems to be more dialogue than anything else. But then there is some times where you have to put a little bit of here's what happens, space it out. Here's another thing that happens. Here's another thing that happens. And I know that that's all suggestions to a director. And that if anybody ever got a hold of a script and was like, okay, this is good, I'm going to remake it, that they're going to put their own spin on it. And then you're going to have the actors put their own spin on it to whatever length that a director allows them to. I understand how important it is to have an actor that is good versus an actor that doesn't get it. Like you could take a pretty bad script with a good actor and they could do something with it, but a bad script with a good actor, I think that's just the same thing I just said. But I understand the point of the actor and the director relationship in the collaboration of a script, but just getting to the point of script writing for a TV show, I mean, you definitely don't have the control of an auteur or a playwright. You're the lowest person, I think, in the equation, that if you are a playwright, you're the all controlling of everything.
Yeah, that's been said. I mean, it's been said that playwrights in the theater world have a lot more respect than screenwriters in the screenplay world or the filmmaking world. And I don't know what that is, but that's been said a lot. I would say also, with your Seinfeld example, you got to remember that I'm not sure if you saw the pilot script of Seinfeld or something from the third or fourth or fifth season, but by the time they got to the second season or even the third or fourth episode of Seinfeld, the basic setup. You have Jerry's apartment, you have the diner. What else did you have? Maybe Kramer's apartment once in a while. But I mean, the point is, once there was that shorthand, because that script, also remember, that Seinfeld script is basically an in-house thing that somehow got leaked to the public. Like Larry David, Larry Charles, Jerry Seinfeld, George, Jason Alexander, who I met once. He's a nice guy, but they all had worked on so many episodes of Seinfeld that you weren't really going to surprise them or shock them. They didn't have to go into a description of the diner every single script, because by the second or third episode, when you're in the diner, we get the idea. It's the diner. Or you don't have to describe, well, Jerry has 20 cereal boxes on his counter, because by the third season, everybody knows he's got Fruit Loops and Rice Krispies or whatever. So a feature film script is a different animal, because you're going into the world of world building, even if it's a one-off movie, even if it's, for instance, with my story, Fight or Play Basketball, that I'm wearing the t-shirt of the cover of the novel. In my script, Fight or Play Basketball, which I did convert into a novel, basically you have to start from ground zero, because the audience doesn't know that this story takes place at Providence College. And if 99 out of 100 people, probably 999 out of 1,000 have never been to Providence College, they don't realize that it's a very pristine college in the middle of a urban kind of nasty environment. So I have to describe that. And I think I did that on page 1 of the novel, because I want people to get the idea that this college campus is an oasis of, financial wealth and people with nice green grass and beautiful architecture in the middle of an, decaying city. So if you're doing a one-off screenplay or a one-off novel like Fight or Play Basketball, you kind of have to tell the audience more, as opposed to the Seinfeld show, where that script is in-house and people already know everything by the time they get to, season 1, episode 10, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt. If Seinfeld was written in a novel in prose, that it would be different than looking at the script. But just looking at that script and you just see Elaine says this, Jerry says this, it doesn't have any parentheses of how they say it or anything. It's just back and forth. And you go, if you get a bad read on that, it's not funny at all. So a lot of it depends on the chemistry, and I guess the rehearsal maybe that goes along with a TV show, or I guess a movie has the same type of thing where you go through the scene a few times. But I guess I'm looking at it from the standpoint of coming from a novel writer to script writing. I like the stripped down version of it. I like the leaving it to the imagination. Although my novel writing, it's not overly descriptive. I think probably the complaint would be that people don't get enough description. But I like the idea of people being able to fill it in for themselves. And in the script, I see it more of like, if I put in a shot, like I'm thinking everything's master shot. So the director has the choice of what to do. And then if I have a specific thing that I'm like, shot on this, then I'll put that in there. But I'm not doing a lot of that. It's every now and then, but it's not so controlling of the scene that a director would look at it and say, I can't work with this because it's too micromanaging. I don't know how much do you put that in your script of, maybe it's different because you're writing a script from the standpoint of you're probably going to direct it, and maybe that's different. But do you write a script and put in 3 or 4 shots in a scene or a sequence that you're suggesting because that's how you see it, and maybe somebody sees it different, but just to kind of keep the storytelling going? How specific do you get?
Well, I think that's you had some of the answers in the question, which is great. I think you just nailed it, which is there's a difference between a script that you write with the idea that you will direct and or produce yourself, versus a script that you write that you're sending out to the world. And I mean, this is going to be a drastic comparison, but it's kind of like if you're a person or a couple that has an infant, has a baby, and you are going to raise that baby yourself, you're probably going to do things in a certain way, right? But if you have the child to birth and then you say, we're going to give this child up for adoption, you are releasing perhaps the religious views of that child onto the mystery parents or the adoptive parents. You're releasing the morals and the ethics and the financial status of this infant. You're releasing that to the adoptive parents. So does that hurt? Does it hurt to think that way? Probably. For the parents out there that have, kids, if you're thinking, hey, my biological DNA is going to be raised by someone else who might instill their religious values or their ethical values or their slant on this or slant on that. Does that cause you pain? I think so. So when you're talking about a screenplay, which by the end of it, and you have to admit that writers and artists we can admit to being a bit eccentric and a bit self-obsessed. So if you're going to put your baby, metaphorically, your screenplay, and I'm not trying to minimize children here, but if you're going to put your baby of a screenplay out into the world and hope that this director, who may or may not be successful, this director might decide to experiment a bit. Like I've had some very painful experiences, Ross, where I've allowed other people, luckily not too many of these experiences, but I've had other people direct things that I've written. And some people have really come through positively. And other times it's watching your child, get raised by sociopaths or whatever. You know what I mean? It's painful because and basically the thought you go to is, I could have done better than that. So I mean, I know that you and I have talked film a few times, and you had good ideas for like how you would film something and how you would do something. I would say that for you personally, you probably would be better served to at least write a short film that you direct yourself, because knowing you, the bit that I do, it seems like you have that capacity, the intelligence, and the wherewithal to do it. Even if it's not a big budget film, I'm sure you could make an interesting 20 or 30-minute movie or 10-minute movie, and you could enter it into something like All Comedy Short Film Festival or All Horror Short Film Festival or Avalonia Festival of Short Films that I produce. So my point is, I feel like, similar to actors, Ross, I feel like a lot of people who write scripts and a lot of actors who just want to act, they would be better served creatively, if not financially, maybe not financially, but they'd be better served creatively if they empowered themselves and say, I'm not just a writer, I'm going to direct a short film. Or I'm not just an actor who's going to audition for all these backyard Cairo syrup, movies in my hometown and hope that one of them becomes a big hit. I'm actually going to write a script and then make a short film, or I'm going to direct a play. I mean, I think, to me, financially, with creativity, I have not been a big success or anywhere near as successful as I think my talents deserve. But at least I can say, hey, I wrote a novel that I wanted to write. I wrote a few of them. Now these days I'm painting a lot because I'm just so sick of sitting around waiting to make a movie that I got into painting. And that's, oddly enough, Ross, I kind of get the same creative juice from making a painting in an hour than I do spending 10 years writing a novel. I mean, no offense to my novel, but the sense of accomplishment of sitting there for an hour and a half and making a painting or two in one day, oddly enough, it's not that much different than writing a book, as weird as that might sound.
Yeah, it's the whole thing of finishing something where you see it and you go, okay, this is it.
This is what it needs to be. Yeah. And I mean, you just, once again, you are very attuned to things, because the finishing, I mean, that's, and here's the thing for the potential screenwriters out there. And I'm not saying don't write screenplays, but when I first started writing, and I thought about this going into the show with you, I remembered this. When I first got into writing screenplays, Ross, and I was reading, this is about 15 years ago, when I'm reading this book and I'm taking the class and I'm in writers group and I'm really into, reading about writing and all this good stuff. But one of the books, I can't remember which one, had a quote that said, if you're a very successful screenwriter compared to most others, you'll have about 20 good to great screenplays that you're very proud of. And if you're really lucky, one of those 20 will have been made to your satisfaction. I read that and I was very upset and depressed. And I was very much like, I'm not going to be that guy with 20 great screenplays on a shelf and only having one made to my satisfaction. That's abhorrent. That's disgusting. I'm going to have, 15 out of 20 made or 19 out of 20 made. I'll show them, whoever wrote that dumb quote in that dumb book. And flash forward 15 years later, Ross, and I've got about 20 great screenplays on the shelf, and one that I feel has been made to its satisfaction, which would be Blood Sugar Sedt Ace, and a bunch of other short films and documentaries and stuff. But as far as features, unfortunately, that's the numbers, at least for me. I hope other people do better.
Well, with this series I'm writing now, it's the way I look at it is I'll get the pilot's out there, and we've entered it into some screenwriting contests. Haven't heard anything back from them yet, but they haven't gotten to the notification date. I was going to put it in one of yours, but it was 2 pages too long, and then I thought I need to condense it down, and I think there's still time to do that for the Avalonia one. I think your short film or short is 20 pages or less, and I'm at 22 pages.
Yeah, and that I would say, and just off the top of my head, I'd say action lines can be squeezed a bit. Basically, if you have a couple of lines where there's action lines, they can be. The other thing, Ross, you might discover that if you had written that one in Microsoft Word, you might discover that with Final Draft, it tightens it up a little bit. That can happen. And also, just things like, a lot of times we talked about the parentheses and the directions to the actors, and I've overdone that myself. Like I will often put, like, Eddie parenthesis quickly blinks 5 times or whatever, and you realize that you're at that point you're overstepping as a writer, and if you are thinking of the hypothetical director beyond yourself, what if the director wants Eddie to blink 4 times instead of 5? Or what if Eddie, the actor, he feel most empowered when he doesn't blink, or he doesn't even think about his blinking? So I mean, I think as writers, we tend to want to direct from the page, which is fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that instinct. But the reality is, like I said about the baby, that inappropriate metaphor I made with giving up your child for adoption. If you're giving up your screenplay to be adopted by director X from Kalamazoo, you are entrusting this individual with your screenplay, with your baby. And once again, I think for guys like yourself and myself that are kind of alpha male types, or would like to be anyway, we probably want that control. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of the great is it the word dichotomy of the filmmaking world, is that the best part about it is also the worst part about it, which is collaboration. You get to meet, if you're collaborating, you get to meet all these exciting people, these wonderful actresses and these intense actors and these cinematographers with an eye and a vision. And the downside is you get to meet all these wonderful people that all want to do wonderful things, but maybe not the way that you want it done. Or, this other, in the co-writing situation, I've had some great co-writing situations, but I've actually kind of put an end to that because I realized that's like having 2 chefs in the kitchen, and ultimately how much salt do you put in versus how much pepper. And I think the co-writing thing, it can be a real way to test a friendship or to even lose a friendship, because ultimately there's just you're never going to have it 100% the way you want it if there's another person who's in 50-50 on this thing. One thing that I've done, Ross, several times is I'll come on as a co-writer, but for the most part, I'm a paid co-writer. If someone wants to pay me and have their name on the script as a writer, typically what it is that they'll have an idea for a screenplay. They have no idea how to write a screenplay. They pay me a few $1,000s or whatever to basically write the script, and they get to put in a lot of feedback. I'll write 10 to 15 pages, send them to 10 to 15 pages. They look at it, approve, or make or request some tweaks, and we'll take it from there. But co-writing is another avalanche to survive. And I remember years ago, I actually had a book about it was a book about co-writing. It was actually someone wrote a book about co-writing screenplays and how to coexist and how to respect each other and so forth like that, because that's a big challenge too.
It is. And I wonder if that book was co-written. It's, you do. I like the baby example. That's a great one. It's a great way to look at it. And having written a couple of novels with another person, we had a pretty good relationship about how we went back and forth, and then we talk about it a little, and then one person would write a chapter and next person write the other chapter, so it keeps you going on. But I think you do have a person that's kind of a lead in most of the time, because if it's their general idea, then you go, okay, well, this must be the vision for it, so I'm going to adjust to that a little. I like the what it teaches you when you're giving up some of that creative thought to somebody else, and then you try to work with what they give you. I think it's a good exercise. It does make you enjoy writing by yourself, and that's okay. But I like the collaborative part of it too. And there have been times during the screenwriting where I thought, man, I should have just done this by myself. But then the other person comes back with some good stuff, and you go, well, initially you're like, man, that's not good at all. And then you start thinking about it more, and it starts developing in your mind, and you go, okay, well, this could be good if we just moved it around a little like this. And it's something that I wouldn't have written on my own. So I like that. But yeah, I do see the collaboration is a different type of art form. I know there's some people that say collaboration is not the art form, that true art is just from the individual, but I don't know. I think you get art from collaboration as well.
Yeah, like I
What?
said, it's the best part and the worst part.
Yeah. What? So you've talked about your film festivals, but what's the best way for people to find the details on them?
The 3 festivals that I run have 2 websites. The first one is avaloniafestival.com. So that's AVALONIA festival, FESTIVAL.com. If people are wondering what that word means, Avalonia was a chunk of land attached to Connecticut, New England, and Massachusetts that drifted off into the ocean. And so it's kind of like an Atlantis thing. So Avalonia is mentioned in my novel, A Distance from Avalon, which is available on Amazon. And Avalonia Festival serves to promote the art that would have been part of Avalonia had Avalonia continued to exist. That's the basic artistic idea. For my festivals, the website, the other 2 festivals, allshortfilms.com. So ALLSHORTFILMS.com. There are 2 festivals on that website. All Comedy Short Film Festival, which is for comedic short films, and I believe the runtime is 30 minutes and under. There's four time divisions: 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, and 30 minute, and then All Horror Short Film Festival. And both of those festivals debuted in 2024, so those 2 are in their second season. Whereas Avalonia Festival of Short Films, etc., is coming up on its 10th edition, which is pretty wild. I mean, time flies. So all of those have entries are open, and on top of that, there's the Avalonia Photography Competition, which is strictly online. The entry fees are pretty low for Avalonia Photography Competition, and the winners are showcased on avaloniafestival.com as well.
Nice. I got those links. They'll be in the show notes for people that need to check them out. And then I have your website and your Instagram in there as well.
Yeah, it's MikeMessier.com. And one solution that I might offer to you, well, not a solution, but a suggestion, and I'd be happy to take part in this. I think there is a screenwriters group in Jacksonville, but if you wanted to start your own, or I could co-create it with you. If you wanted to start a screenwriters group, not to co-write scripts together, but as a accountability group or a fellowship group of screenwriters or writers in general that want to compare notes on a weekly or twice a month basis or once a month, I'd be happy to do that, because I feel like the best writing that I ever did, for screenplays was probably 2008 to 2013, when I was in this in-person, in Providence screenwriting group. One of our members was Carl Dupre, who wrote Detroit Rock City, and he wrote 2 of the Hellraiser films. But basically, the idea was we would meet on a weekly or every other week basis at a coffee house, and we would all bring our scripts and compare notes. And to me, that accountability is better than co-writing, because you're still getting that feedback and you're getting that in person, and that, sometimes you just need encouragement is what it comes down to. And I feel like sometimes co-writing is just a way for people to encourage each other, when in fact a writers group can kind of do some of the same thing without having to fight over the future of the baby screenplay, so to speak.
Yeah, that'd be a good chapter in a screenwriting book, the difference between a co-writing and then just a writing group, because I think there is a big difference in that. I
Oh yeah.
wonder if you'd have people reluctant to be in a screenwriting group because they're worried about people taking their ideas.
I mean, that's possible, but here's the thing, and this is the risk we all take. If you're going to send your screenplay uh, with the idea that someone else is going to direct it, someone else is going to produce it, a lot of times you're putting your stuff into an email, or you're putting your stuff onto a website like Network ISA that I've been on for 10 or 12 years, and you're putting your stuff out there with the hope that it doesn't get stolen. But here's the caveat to that, Ross. If someone were to steal your screenplay and someone were to steal your ideas and make the movie that you wrote, it's there's a chance that if you ever discover that, you could sue them, right? So you get paid in the end anyway. And the other thing is, for anybody with the money to actually make a decent movie and to steal some screenwriter's script to do that, the chance that they're taking of getting sued or getting busted or getting their reputation ruined, anyone with any common sense in the film industry would rather just pay the screenwriter $5,000, $10,000, $200, a million, whatever they can pay the screenwriter, is going to be a pittance compared to the risk they take of getting sued or having their reputation destroyed or whatever. So my feeling is, yes, it's something to be aware of, but that fear of getting plagiarized, especially in a screenwriting group of local people, most of which probably don't have the budget to make a movie, even if they wanted to steal it, it's pretty low.
It's a good point. Good point. All right. Good information. Good talk. Got your links in the show notes. Any thoughts in closing?
No, I just appreciate you having me on the show, Ross. And, like I said, I'm painting. People, if they're watching the YouTube version of this, it's MikeMessier.com/shop. My novel, Fight or Play Basketball, is available on Amazon. And, Mike Messier, one Mike Messier in YouTube. And for the wrestling fans, one Pro Wrestling and Sports Fan YouTube channel. And just happy to be here. And MikeMessier.com is the easiest way to find me and my links. So thank you very much for having me on.
All right. Thank you.